Breaking news coming in. Humiliated by the United Nations Security Council by not getting an open hearing on the issue of Jammu and Kashmir, a desperate Pakistan has now turned to the United States of America for help. Panic-stricken Pakistan's puppet Prime Minister Imran Khan is said to have spoken to the US President Donald Trump ahead of this informal meeting of the United Nations Security Council. Remember, the US has already backed India on the modification of Article 370, saying that the US has been informed by India that the modification of Article 370 and the bifurcation of Jammu and Kashmir into two union territories, Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh, is India's internal matter. The US President Donald Trump, of course, himself did a U-turn on the issue of mediation offer for Jammu and Kashmir, saying that offer was there only as long as both India and Pakistan wanted it. But since India does not want it, this issue needs to be sorted out bilaterally. So this shows Pakistan's frustration. You heard Shah Mahmood Qureshi, Pakistan's foreign minister, who said UN koi mala lekar nahi baitha hai for Pakistan. And this despite the fact that Pakistan has made all efforts possible to rake up the Kashmir issue internationally. Shah Mahmood Qureshi air-dashed to Beijing, and perhaps, and that's the question we'll be asking on the broadcast, is that the reason why China actually pushed for United Nations Security Council to have an informal discussion at the UNSC? Remember, what does an informal discussion mean? No records will be kept. No resolution will be passed. Of course, there will be details that will come out, but none of this would be binding. The big questions that we're asking here on the broadcast: has Pakistan shot itself in the foot by raking up Kashmir internationally? Should India be concerned about China's stance? What does this informal discussion actually mean for the United Nations Security Council? Is Pakistan playing to its domestic gallery with zero outcome? And should India now raise the stakes for Pakistan? Should India expose Pakistan's atrocities in Pakistan-occupied Kashmir? For far too long, Pakistan literally got away with murder in Pakistan-occupied Kashmir and Gilgit and Baltistan. And that's the question. Why were previous governments completely silent with Pakistan about Pakistan Army's atrocities in Gilgit and in Baltistan and also in Pakistan-occupied Kashmir? Pavni Mittal, my colleague, joins me from New York for more on the story. Also with me is India Today's consultant editor Shiv Arur. But Pavni, I want to come to you first. What's happening at the UN Security Council? That meeting would have started about half an hour back.
Well, you know, it's a closed-door meeting, as you said. There's no record. It's honestly, China asked for it. They did it. That's just the attitude of the UN now. There's very little that actually happens at the UN now, because if you look at the P5, I mean, these are not countries that have the best relationships with each other. The meeting is over. Russia has maintained its stand that this is a bilateral issue. And yes, Imran Khan has reportedly spoken to the president. But, you know, I mean, this is not a president whose diplomacy anybody seriously takes, even in the US. I mean, this is Twitter diplomacy that he engages in. Now he wants to buy Greenland. He refused to mediate in the Hong Kong issue. So honestly, like you said, it's sort of a dead end, and the meeting that, you know, what happened, it's over, and the UN is not going to keep a record of this.
So this meeting is over. This meeting, and Pavni is getting us this information, so it didn't even last. 15 members of the United Nations Security Council, the meeting didn't even last for half an hour, Pavni. So, you know, what transpired in this meeting?
Well, you know, it's a closed-door meeting, so we really don't know what happens, because also, you know, we must mention that neither Pakistan nor India were part of this meeting. This was something that China had asked for, so this happened. But the reports, I mean, if you go by what's been reported earlier, Poland, which is, you know, the president of the UNSC right now, and it's a presidency that rotates, has maintained its stand. The US is not going to go head to head with India. Russia, which is a P5 member, has said that it's a bilateral issue. Only China is actually the only country that has supported Pakistan in this. This is the only country that asked for it. This is the only country that is making a stand. And to be honest, given what's happening in Western China with the Uyghurs and in Hong Kong, this is really a case of the pot calling the kettle black.
Well, you know, yeah, in a way, though I differ with it only in the sense, Pavni, China is actually ill-treating 1 million Muslims in its Xinjiang province. It's put 1 million people in jail. That's not what's happening in India.
Sure.
In Kashmir, that's actually not happening. Pavni, stay with me for a moment. Breaking news coming in from the United Nations Security Council. And Russia has weighed in favor of India. Russia has given a big thumbs down as far as Pakistan's efforts were concerned at the United Nations Security Council, or so to say, as far as China's efforts were concerned at the United Nations Security Council, because Russia has made it very clear this is an issue that needs to be discussed bilaterally between India and Pakistan. Russia has indicated that the United Nations Security Council has no role to play in the issue of Jammu and Kashmir. And of course, now the Union territories of Jammu and Kashmir and the Union territory of Ladakh. Pavni, stay with me for a moment. I want to bring in consultant editor Shiv Arur for more on the story. Shiv, huge shot in the arm for India and huge setback for that state sponsor of terrorism called Pakistan.
The first big setback for Pakistan was the fact that this was a closed-door meeting and an informal one, Gaurav. You remember they wanted the United Nations Security Council to make this a full formal meeting with the possibility of a resolution at the end of it. China tried for that as well. And we're hearing that it was probably Russia that ensured that this was a closed-door meeting. Otherwise, you know, who knows what may have actually happened at the United Nations Security Council. Having said that, this was always going to be a dead end for Pakistan. It's only a sign of their desperation. Russia's stand on Kashmir, on Pakistan-occupied Kashmir, on the bilaterality, on the fact that Jammu and Kashmir is an internal issue of India, has been categorical and explicit right from the start. So I'm not very surprised that Russia has taken this stand at the United Nations Security Council, but it definitely is another message to Pakistan in what has been a week of setbacks and a week of humiliations, for the Pakistani system. Considering that they've gone to the United Nations, they've gone knocking to the United States right now, they've tried all of their allies, China itself a bit on the back foot, not completely endorsing Pakistan's line, taking their own line as far as Ladakh is concerned, means that Pakistan is once again getting a global message that it stands alone. Nobody wants to help Pakistan out.
Okay, so what we are learning, and Pavni, just add to the knowledge, bits of information filtering in from the United Nations. So Russia calls for the Kashmir issue to be dealt bilaterally between India and Pakistan. And this is a huge setback, Pavni, for Pakistan that desperately tried to internationalize it. Also, in a way, Pavni, setback for China, because while this was to be dealt informally, nothing's actually come out of it. Russia's come out and said this issue should be dealt with bilaterally.
Oh, definitely. And the US hasn't actually issued any official statement, but honestly, the US is not going to get involved in this. I mean, this is something that's common knowledge. China was able to call this meeting because it's a permanent it's a member of the P5, but so is Russia. And this is basically, honestly, I mean, this is a dead end. I also want to add that Antonio Guterres, before the meeting, had called for peace, but also underlined the fact that this was an internal matter. I mean, that's what he said effectively. So even going into this meeting, I mean, nobody really expected anything to come out. And now that we know that Prime Minister Imran Khan has spoken to Donald Trump, you might get a tweet or so, but given his track record, and as someone who's here and, covering the Trump presidency, there's really no expectation of any American mediation in this.
Absolutely, absolutely. Pavni, stay with me for a moment. I have Yoshita Singh, senior journalist, joining me from New York for more on the story. Yoshita, what more can you tell us? What's happening at the United Nations Security Council? What are you picking up?
Yeah, I'm right outside the United Nations Security Council consultations room where the meeting is still going on. It's not over yet. The Russian ambassador, the Russian deputy permanent representative spoke before he went inside for the meeting. And I stressed that for India, Kashmir is a bilateral issue. It's an internal issue. And then he said that Russia favors a bilateral track between India and Pakistan. On the issue of Kashmir. This he said before he went inside for the meeting. The meeting is still going on. It's not over yet, and it's a closed door consultations. We can expect some ambassadors to come out and brief maybe after the meeting is over. We still have to see how it goes. But given the fact it's an informal consultation, no record is kept of such meetings. So and Pakistan had requested to be present inside the meeting, but obviously that request was also denied. So it's just the permanent 5 members and the 10 non-permanent members of the Security Council who are inside for this meeting, and it's still going on. But big news coming in from Russia, which said that it has always maintained Kashmir is a bilateral issue between India and Pakistan, and it should be resolved bilaterally. He said this just before he entered the consultations room for the meeting.
Okay, so Yoshita, that would be a shot in the arm for India's stance that Kashmir is a bilateral issue as far as Russia is concerned. That meeting is still on. Do we know, Yoshita, the stated positions of all the 15 members as far as this issue is concerned, or do we know which way is the wind blowing?
Like we all know that China had asked for this meeting, and China is Pakistan's all-weather ally. Pakistan is China's all-weather ally. So it is just because of China's asking for this meeting that this meeting is being taking place. We saw even in the case of the designation of Masood Azhar, China was the only country that was blocking its bid to designate Masood Azhar for so many years. China was the only country among the 15 council members. So clearly, Pakistan is the only nation that wants to internationalize Kashmir here at the UN. China is giving its backing to it, given the close allies that they are. But overall, the Security Council and other members of the Security Council feel that Kashmir is a bilateral issue. Whenever Pakistan brings up Kashmir at the UN, there has been no traction for it. None of the other nations have given it any cognizance, whether it is at the UN General Assembly or in other forum here at the UN. I've been covering this issue now for almost 8 years at the UN.
Yes.
It's only Pakistan that takes up the Kashmir issue. It does not get any traction. So clearly for the international community, Kashmir is a bilateral issue between India and Pakistan that needs to be resolved through dialogue between these two nations. And Pakistan, for its part, will continue to rake it up at as many forums as it can. And it's just that China has this time backed it and asked for a meeting. But clearly everybody else thinks that it's a bilateral issue.
Okay, Yoshita and Pavni, stay with me. I also want to bring in Ambassador Rajiv Dogra, former ambassador to Italy, former consul general in Karachi. Ambassador Rajiv Dogra, what do you make of it? So we are now learning that the meeting is still on. The Russian envoy to the UN, he said as far as he's concerned, Kashmir is a bilateral issue, as Yoshita is just informing us, as he entered that meeting room. That meeting's still on. So, Ambassador, should we be concerned that China backed Pakistan's request for a discussion, even if it's an informal discussion, especially when the UN had said no and that it should be bilateral?
Well, I think any UN meeting concerning two countries, in this case India and Pakistan, should not be taken lightly, especially in view of the fact that UN had already turned down the request from Pakistan to hold an emergency meeting. After that, China took the unusual step of asking for a meeting and ensuring that it got yes for an answer. So China would not go in to make such a request unless it had its game plan ready. So if it has a game plan, I think we need to be concerned and we need to take the issue seriously.
Are we taking this issue as seriously as we should be, Shiv? Because many seem to be indicating that, Pakistan cannot do anything about it because Pakistan has lost this battle in every other way, including terror. It's once again using China to rake it up internationally. Imran Khan called up Donald Trump. He sent Shah Mahmood Qureshi to Beijing. He didn't get a positive response from the OIC. How is India responding to all of this?
Gaurav, I think one of the greatest things about India's response is its lack of having to say anything
India is
while
responding
Pakistan
in a
continues
mature
on this path of
fashion,
humiliating
as
and
it
getting
should.
itself snubbed on virtually every world forum. I completely agree with Yoshita when she says that the lack of traction has truly been internationalized by Pakistan by it trying to get its attention in all of these forums. Now, India first put out a statement when Pakistan, when Article 370 was abrogated. When Pakistan made certain claims, the Indian External Affairs Ministry had some comments to make. But post that, there have been no comments. There have been no statements whatsoever. Our embassies abroad have been briefing, briefing leaders in other countries. But apart from that, India has not needed to intervene to say anything additional because we've got a fantastic team at the United Nations, unlike Pakistan, which is led by Maliha Lodhi, who has been an embarrassment after embarrassment. She was recently heckled by Pakistani citizens in the United States as well. So India has full faith in the United Nations. I mean, India knows that as far as the United Nations is concerned, India's allies are steadfast, and even the allies of Pakistan have decided not to toe the line as far as this very sensitive issue is concerned. So India is on rock steady ground.
India is on rock steady ground, and Ambassador, Shiv has a point. One, India has a solid case. Two, we're a powerful nation. How much do we care, for Pakistan's raving and ranting any which ways? Three, Pakistan anyway is a country that's seen as a state sponsor of terror. So will Pakistan be taken seriously? And four, backed by a country like China, which is ill-treating more than 1 million Uyghur Muslims in their own territory. So Ambassador Rajiv Dogra, should we be very concerned? Should we be worried? Or are we on rock solid ground?
Well, both of you are absolutely right in saying that India is a mature country and seen to be responsible in the world opinion. In comparison, Pakistan is seen to be an irresponsible country and as a state sponsor of terror. So you are absolutely right. But at the same time, we have to be on our guard all the time, because the chance is, the possibility is that China may raise the issue of regional peace, whether India's actions are a threat to the regional peace. That should worry me and that should worry us, because in that case, China gets a handle to push for something like a fact-finding team by the UN into the region. So,
stay with me for a moment. I have Professor Bharat Karnad joining me.
In such a situation.
Okay. I have Professor Bharat Karnad joining me on the broadcast. He's a very well-respected strategic affairs analyst. Tuhin Sinha is the spokesperson of the BJP. I also have Ray Loker joining me from the United States of America. Ray Loker is an author. He's a security affairs expert. And Ray Loker, we've just been told that Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan had a 20-minute long conversation with the US President Donald Trump and sought support on the Kashmir issue. What would you make of it?
Well, it's obvious that he would do that. He was recently in Washington meeting with the president. The interesting thing is now people in the United States don't know who President Trump talks to because they stopped providing readouts on those calls. I think it's interesting that President Trump talked to Imran Khan for 20 minutes. It's logical that Khan would seek the U.S. help. And Trump has been all over the map on this issue. He said that Modi sought out his intercession and, negotiate this thing, which was a total lie. So from the U.S. perspective, it's hard to see, what we're going to be able to do in all this or where we're going to fall in the Security Council argument.
Okay. Professor Karnad, how do you look at this development, this informal meeting that's happening at the United Nations Security Council? Is there reason for India to be concerned, or is Pakistan shooting itself in the foot?
Well, as Ambassador Rana said, the real problem is the initiative and how far China is willing to push this issue in the informal discussions that they're going to have at the UN Security Council. The problem is India's very pusillanimous attitude to China. I mean, if China raises the issue of Kashmir as destabilizing the region, for instance, why don't we raise the issue of Uyghur genocide, or even more, the protests in Hong Kong,
Yes.
where the political will of the people of Hong Kong is being trampled on? I mean, why is New Delhi so has its tails between its legs when it comes to China, but is all brave and bold and very upfront when it comes to Pakistan, which is not a threat but a nuisance, something we haven't realized in all the 70 years of our existence. Pakistan is a nuisance, not a threat. Deal with China, which is the real threat and the only threat that India faces. And as long as we have this attitude of eventually or somehow conciliating with China, kowtowing to Beijing, you're going to get kicked in the teeth. And this is what Indian governments have not realized. And MEA is, in a sense, the worst, shall we say, the victim
Okay.
of China's very brazen policies when it comes to India.
Okay, that's a big point both you and Ambassador Dogra are making. Sir, stay with me. Let me take it to BJP's Tuhin Sinha. Tuhin Sinha, many in the strategic community say that when it comes to Pakistan, we see that 56-inch ki chhati, but when it comes to China, we are suddenly far more guarded, whereas it's China that's actually needling us. Like this meeting that's happening at the UN Security Council, even though informal, even though there will be no records kept, even though there'll be nothing to be greatly concerned about, is happening at China's behest. And this at a time when Foreign Minister Jaishankar just visited Beijing.
Gaurav, you need to prioritize your adversaries, and that this entire approach is part of a very layered strategy that we have towards both Pakistan and China. Today's UNSC snub for Pakistan is not just a snub for Pakistan, but it is equally a snub for China as well, because it was purely at China's behest that this meeting eventually took place. And today's snub is such that today, the ostracization of Pakistan across the world, not just the Islamic world, and for a change, for the first time, the Islamic countries have also been muted in their support for Pakistan, or at best, in fact, UAE has openly supported India. So this is a huge turning point, even in world politics, where Pakistan's ostracization today is complete, and this shows India's diplomatic
progress. The fact that the matter is being discussed at the United Nations Security Council for the first time after 1971, a liberation of Bangladesh, goes on to indicate Pakistan may not be as isolated as you would want us to believe. But Ray Locker, the point that Professor Bharat Karnad raised, and just a short while, give me a moment, Ray Locker, why is it that somebody like the United States of America also does not raise the issue of Uyghur Muslims being ill-treated by China? Pakistan doesn't do that. And on the other side of a break, I will show you how timid Imran Khan is when asked a question about Uyghur Muslims. But why not Donald Trump, Mr. Locker?
Donald Trump probably doesn't know anything about it, and it's not a priority for his administration. I mean, it has been in previous administrations, which is why there have been some, difficult times with China. Obviously, it's on the U.S. radar screen, but it's certainly not a priority with this White House, which kind of pitches and yaws with whatever whim the president may have at any particular time. To look for some kind of consistency in terms of policy here is really hard. It's not because people haven't looked, it's just been hard to find. And that makes, the U.S. role in a situation like this very difficult, because we have not displayed anything recently that gives any side reason to believe, that we can be counted on. Certainly at the White House, maybe with, in the lower diplomatic levels, that's a different matter.
Okay, I need to slip into a quick break here, but don't go anywhere. When we come back, are we focusing on the wrong adversary? Are we focusing too much on Pakistan? Because the problem lies elsewhere, and that's China. That aspect and lots more on the other side of a quick break. Stay with us. Welcome back. Our big focus story. There is a meeting happening at the United Nations Security Council. It's an informal meeting where no notes will be taken, no records will be kept. This won't become a part of the United Nations Security Council records, but this is a meeting that Pakistan requested China to have on the Kashmir issue, and that is why the P5+10 are meeting for this. Now, Imran Khan claims that he's very worried about the condition of Muslims in Jammu and Kashmir and in India. He says that Narendra Modi and the RSS are to be blamed for what's happening. So look at Imran Khan talking with the forked tongue. Imran Khan on India and Imran Khan's stunned silence when it comes to the Uyghur Muslims in China.
What's your stance on China's treatment of Uyghur Muslims?
Frankly, I don't know much about that.
But you won't speak out against what's happening in China?
If I had enough knowledge, I would speak about it. It is not so much in the papers.
But there's Pakistani men that have gone to protest about their wives being detained.
I haven't heard about that.
और ये आइडियोलॉजी के अंदर जिस तरह नाज़ीज़ के अंदर था, इसमें उन्होंने मुसलमानों की एथनिक क्लेंजिंग भी रखी हुई थी हिंदुस्तान से, कि इनकी जगह नहीं है हिंदुस्तान में। ये आइडियोलॉजी अगर हम ये समझ जाएं तो उसके बाद आपको बहुत चीजें समझ आ जाएंगी।
Shiv, you saw the manner in which Imran Khan was ranting about what's happening in Kashmir, but not a word when it came to perhaps his paymasters, his masters, China, and their treatment of the Uyghur Muslims.
There's I use this word with caution, but there is almost a shameless, brazen aspect to the manner in which Imran Khan says, I haven't heard about the Uyghur issue, or I haven't read about it, I don't know enough to comment on it. And he immediately in that answer starts talking about how China has been very good to Pakistan, it's very important to Pakistan. So he takes a potentially embarrassing question, given that he is preaching shamelessly about genocide in Kashmir and in Palestine, and making it about how China is actually this wonderful presence in Pakistan. But that, I think, in a very small nutshell, Gaurav, is what Imran Khan is about. A lot of spectacle, very little substance, the attempt to use his celebrity to get friends abroad against India, and spectacularly failing, at least in the last few weeks.
Okay. Professor Bharat Karnad, your appreciation, should India wait for the outcome of this meeting, or should India actually be on the offensive when it comes to one, Pakistan's atrocities in Pakistan-occupied Kashmir, in Gilgit and in Baltistan, how Pakistan has changed the demographic profile of that region, sir?
Yeah, well, it's programmed to virtually kill off the Hazaras and the Hunza Shias, and replace them with Punjabi Muslimans and so on. It's an ongoing program of long vintage, actually. The other thing is, it's curious that Mr. Imran Khan talks about ethnic cleansing in India, supposed ethnic cleansing in India of Muslims, when the Pakistani state, right at its inception, ethnically cleansed Pakistan, the then very infant state of Pakistan, of all the Sikh and Hindus.
Yes.
If you may recall, Hindus and Sikhs constituted 50% of Lahore.
Yes.
And they very methodically went about vacating that space of Hindus and Sikhs. And the same Imran now talks about Indian Muslims and Pakistan being worried about them. I mean, this is really ridiculous, and someone should point it out to them. Perhaps the Indian government should get into the act and say this. As regards the informal discussions in the United Nations, let's just hold our horses and see what transpires.
Okay.
If Beijing, insists on some kind of fact-finding or mission or some such thing, then that's when I think India should get into high gear and sending a similar mission to Hong Kong, to Xinjiang,
yes.
to the South China Seas,
Yes.
where the Chinese have been bullying the Southeast Asian nations. So I think we should begin to equalize and get our courage up to face China.
Okay, Ambassador Dogra, you concur, because Pakistan is a nuisance, as Bharat Karnad was just putting it, a nuisance we can deal with effectively. But when it comes to China, we need to up our game, sir. Foreign Minister S. Jaishankar was in Beijing just a couple of days ago, had a close meeting with Wang Yi on a number of issues, and yet China raises this, even though informally. So is it time for India to now start talking about what's happening in Hong Kong and in Xinjiang and in South China Sea?
Well, I agree entirely with Shivarur when he says that Pakistan's greatest misfortune is to have someone like Imran Khan at the top at this moment, a moment which is critical for Pakistan. But at the same time, let's be realistic about the entire issue. At the moment, our focus should be what is going to happen in the next 30 minutes or 1 hour. And what is going to happen in the next 30 minutes to 1 hour is going to be driven by both Pakistan from the back, behind the scenes, and China within that conference hall. More or less, it worries me that Trump should have given as much as 20 minutes to telephonic conversation with Imran Khan, because Trump, as everyone knows, has an attention span of a few nanoseconds.
Yes.
So obviously there is something more on which Imran Khan was able to pressurize him, and that something more can only be Afghanistan,
Yes.
where America was hoping that by next week they'll be able to sign a deal with Taliban. So let's not be very sure that things will go our way either at this meeting today or later on the Indo-Pak front. We can tackle China or think of tackling China at a later date.
Yes.
But first we have to be on our own guard as far as Kashmir is concerned, and as far as China's ill intentions are concerned with regard to this meeting.
Fair enough, because Ray Locker, as Ambassador Dogra was rightly pointing out, Donald Trump's attention span is something that's well known. And of course, we as of now only have the Pakistani side of the story. We do not have the American side of the story. Pakistan claims that this conversation lasted 20 minutes and it could well have been more about Afghanistan and less about Kashmir. But should that be a matter of concern as far as India is concerned, Ray Locker, in your appreciation?
Well, I think anytime the President of the United States talks to the head of your major adversary, that's something that you should be concerned about. You never know what the President could have told Imran Khan. We will probably have a hard time finding out exactly what transpired in that conversation. Certainly, I don't think anybody should trust the Pakistani side of it, because obviously they'll put out things that are in their own interests. As far as what we get from the White House remains to be seen. But, if I'm Narendra Modi, I don't want Donald Trump talking to Imran Khan for 20 minutes. You don't know what could happen.
Okay.
But also, Modi has talked to the president a number of times. He knows what happens in those conversations. I don't think it's an existential crisis. It's a concern. It's not a crisis.
Okay. Hamza Amir, my colleague, joins us from Islamabad. Hamza, what are you picking up from the Pakistani camp or the Pakistani Foreign Office in Islamabad?
Well, Gaurav, Pakistan Foreign Office is actually saying that this is a major achievement for Pakistan, because in the past 50 years, this is the first time that the United Nations Security Council has picked up on a matter regarding Kashmir. China's request was there, Pakistan's letter was there, and Pakistan is hopeful that the United Nations Security Council will not only discuss it but also draw a roadmap on how they're going to take this forward. And Pakistan is saying, and very hopefully saying, that their discussions are going to be going in favor of Pakistan.
Okay, so that's an assumption, Tuhin Sinha, but somewhere down the line we need to be, really, we need to have our eye on the ball. What's happening in Kashmir, many diplomats say, is a cause for concern. Internet shut down, phone lines down, many political leaders, those who swear by the Indian constitution also under house arrest or in deemed jails, Tuhin Sinha.
Well, it's a matter of a couple of days. I know it's been 10 days and we have been expecting, we wanted to have these restrictions at least till 15th August. And trust me, it's going to be a matter of days before these restrictions are removed. Coming to the larger question, you were asking about China. On the contrary, this is a government which has kept China under check, at least on two issues. First, our principled opposition to OBOR, and then the way we, check their ingressions on Doklam. China surely realizes that they can't mess around with us. But yes, at this particular situation, we don't see the additional need to be very aggressive on what's happening in some province of China. I think the larger issue still remains the way Pakistan is behaving, and three of Imran Khan's statements in the last 3 days, whether number one, his equating RSS with Nazi, I think that was absolutely out of place, because somebody who has been a known Taliban sympathizer, who kept mum when 140 school children were murdered in 2014, has no business to talk about RSS. Number two, he still refers to Kashmir as India occupied Kashmir, whereas actually we should be referring to certain parts of Pakistan today as China occupied Pakistan.
Well, and, you should also be highlighting that. Your government should be highlighting that.
Kashmir.
I'm surprised.
That was completely out of place. On the contrary,
I'm surprised previous governments didn't rake up these issues in the manner in which they should have. But Professor Karnad, the government is dealing with the Kashmir issue internally. That government has told the UN, the US, Russia's in our favor. But as far as Pakistan is concerned, should we be in a way putting Pakistan on the defensive instead of just reacting to what Pakistan is doing? Or should we not really be bothered about what's happening at the UN? Because, I mean, how seriously is the UN taken anyways in today's day and age?
No, first things first. UN is a useless talk shop. But the problem is India aspires to join this talk shop as a permanent member, which of course with China there you don't have an iota of a chance.
Yes.
So that's the real problem. It's a useless organization really, and therefore one should not pay heed to it. Now because we say the status of Jammu and Kashmir is now settled, and it's a fait accompli, where is the need to react to every little thing that Islamabad says, or the move it may make in United Nations or the OIC or any other forum?
Yes.
I think we should play it low key. We should, however, get into the act very centrally when China comes into view and tries to support the Pakistani viewpoint. I think that's where Delhi has been failing to make its case to the world and to put China on the defensive. And by the way, we haven't ever used market access, in the threat of cutting off Chinese market access to India as a way to bring China and Beijing online.
Yes.
Why don't we do it?
Yes.
We never do it. Jaishankar keeps saying we should not make differences turn into disputes. What does that mean? I mean, it's the Chinese who are taking the initiative in converting differences into disputes where they have no business to get into the act in the first place. So, I mean, we really have to be a little bit more offensive where China is concerned and little more understanding, or just ignore Pakistan. And that's the way to deal with the whole issue created now by the abrogation of Article 370.
Which was a step anyways, as the government says, in the right direction. In the past, remember, Pakistan is trying to put a lot of pressure on India, indulging in a lot of breast beating globally. But it's actually Pakistan that changed the demographic profile of Gilgit, of Baltistan, of Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. And it started doing that as part of a very, very systematic campaign. We've put together this report to show you protests that are taking place across Pakistan-occupied Kashmir, Gilgit and Baltistan, and not just now, but for a long time now. Protests in Pakistan-occupied Kashmir's Gilgit and Baltistan area against the illegal occupation and atrocities by the Pakistan Army. This isn't an isolated protest. Since 1947, there have been a series of protests against the Pakistan Army, not only illegally occupying a part of Jammu and Kashmir, but also deliberately changing the demographic profile of the region.
Every time something happens on our side, we must always address it to say that this effect is also going to have a radical effect on the other side. But the issue is, on the other side, the complete demography has changed. Pakistan has very cleverly changed the complete demography of so-called Pakistan-occupied Kashmir, Gilgit, Baltistan.
In 1974, Pakistan brought out the notorious resettlement law under Zulfikar Ali Bhutto. Under the resettlement law, state subject rule in Gilgit and Baltistan was abrogated. This allowed for settlement of people from Pakistan's Punjab province and other regions in Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. It changed the demographic profile of Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. In 1970, Gilgit and Baltistan had been merged into centrally administered northern areas. Pakistan Army also moved thousands of Pashtuns from what is now known as the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa area and changed the Shia profile of Gilgit and Baltistan. Similarly, Pakistan Army settled a number of retired soldiers and rangers originally from Pakistan's Punjab province in and around Muzaffarabad to change the demographic profile of Pakistan-occupied Kashmir.
Now Pakistan trying to annex Gilgit-Baltistan as its fifth province, that is illegal and against international laws, against the UN resolutions on Kashmir, and against the constitution of Pakistan as well. Pakistani constitution says that Gilgit-Baltistan and so-called Azad Kashmir are the part of former princely state of Jammu and Kashmir.
In 1948, Shias constituted 84% of the population of Gilgit and Baltistan. By 2011, Shias were down to 39% and Sunnis up to 31%. Late military dictator General Ziaul Haq had started the conscious policy of changing the demographic profile of Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. The Pakistan Army also usurped most of the rights of the people of Pakistan-occupied Kashmir for the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor passing through Gilgit and Baltistan. From 2006, students from Gilgit and Baltistan in POK sought IIT and IIM-like colleges even in POK. Some even wrote to Government of India seeking a reservation at IITs and IIMs for students from Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. Sadly, government has not focused much on Pakistan deliberately changing demographic profile in Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. Bureau Report, India Today. These chants of Azadi in Pakistan-occupied Kashmir, in Gilgit and in Baltistan, Ambassador Dogra, why hasn't India taken up the issue of freedom for people of Gilgit and Baltistan? There are students of Gilgit and Baltistan who've been writing to India saying, give us reservation at IIT, IIMs because we are part of Pakistan-occupied Kashmir, which is Indian territory, and we don't get it. Why aren't we raising these issues, sir?
Well, you are absolutely right. We must encourage students from Gilgit-Baltistan to study in India and see for themselves democracy in action. But I have a counter question. How many people in 1.3 billion population of India know what Gilgit and Baltistan is and where Gilgit and Baltistan is in that area called Pakistan-occupied Kashmir? I bet that you would not find more than a few dozen people who know where exactly Gilgit and Baltistan is and how it was annexed by a 25-year-old Major Brown at the instigation of Jinnah's soldiers. So first we have to educate ourselves as to what Gilgit and Baltistan is.
No, but why didn't our Foreign Office, why didn't the Minister of External Affairs raise this? Why didn't the Minister of External Affairs, raise it for decades in the past?
For the same reason as why Article 370 was not abolished so far, because Ministry of External Affairs can only act if its political masters desire it to act. On its own, it cannot take an initiative of such importance. So if the government of the day decides that yes, now we must focus our attention on this issue, Ministry of External Affairs has some very fine diplomats who will be able to put the message across extremely well.
And Bharat Karnat, perhaps that should be the next step to take the battle into Pakistan's camp diplomatically, expose their atrocities in POK, in Gilgit and in Baltistan, sir.
Well, that follows. I mean, the whole idea is that we should first claim, I mean, so for many years now, the ME and the Indian government has never referred to the Pakistan-occupied Kashmir, Hunza, Gilgit, Baltistan as being centrally also in the mix. We don't even refer to it. We let Pakistan get away with just talking about Jammu and Kashmir. And they don't refer, the Indian government doesn't refer. So whose fault is it that it's not been internationalized? Over 50 years now, people have virtually forgotten that there is such a thing as Hunza, Gilgit, Baltistan that were illegally annexed and then became part of the so-called POK, and we have done nothing to contest it.
And then became a part of northern areas. But Shiv and I here on India Today, we will continue to expose Pakistan's atrocities in Gilgit, in Baltistan, in Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. But I have breaking news that's just coming in. It's a big story that's coming in. Trouble mounts for controversial Islamic preacher Zakir Naik. That's a big story. Malaysia may reconsider the permanent residency that's been granted to Zakir Naik. Malaysia, we've been told police will summon Zakir Naik for his controversial statements. Remember, he's a controversial Islamic preacher. And trouble mounts for Zakir Naik because this time he's questioned the loyalty of Malaysian Hindus. Zakir Naik claims that the Chinese are also guests in Malaysia and they should leave. Hate preacher Zakir Naik in trouble in Malaysia. I want to quickly bring in Shiv Arur for more on this. Shiv, this time there are cabinet ministers in the Malaysian government who say that this man should no longer be living in Malaysia and he's a man who's wanted in India, in Bangladesh and in Sri Lanka.
Not one cabinet minister but two cabinet ministers, both of Indian origin, who've made it a campaign against Zakir Naik based on two speeches that he gave recently, Gaurav. One speech in which he spoke against the Malaysian Chinese, and the second one where he spoke about the Hindus who are in Malaysia at this point of time and compared them with the Muslims of India. A lot of people have taken great offense, and remember the campaign and the statement that's been put out by two cabinet ministers, Kulasegaran and Guru Gobind Deo, goes against what the Malaysian government had previously said about Zakir Naik, where they had practically protected him over suggestions that he wouldn't face a fair trial back in India, where he faces very serious charges. So this is actually very promising for Indian investigators.
We will track the story very closely. Will President Mahathir Mohamad review the permanent residency that's given to that controversial hate preacher Zakir Naik? We'll track that story closely. To all my guests, many thanks for joining me. That is all I have time for on India First this evening, but we'll be tracking developments in New York very closely. A quick break. News and updates continue on India Today. Rajdeep Sardesai comes up next. Stay with us.
Thanks for watching the video. For more such news and updates, please like, share and subscribe to India Today. Also check out our other great videos from our channel. We know you will love to.